Hey everybody, and welcome back to Autumn Leigh at Home. My name's Autumn Leigh, and today we are gonna prepare for 2 parties in one day. Yes, you heard right. I'm having 2 parties in one day. Thankfully, I am not hosting them. To be fair, I'm not hosting them. However, one of them is a Chinese New Year celebration, and I'm really excited because it's a chance for me to spend time with my friends, my Chinese friends, as well as my kids getting to know their culture a little bit more. So that means I get to also learn their culture a little bit more. So we are going to be making almond cookies, which are supposed to be a Chinese New Year treat over there that they tend to do, as well as celebrate or get ready for our Super Bowl party that we are attending. And with that one, I'm gonna do garlic pull-apart bread as well as some monkey bread. I was gonna choose one or the other, but then I couldn't decide. So I just decided to do both. So we're gonna be making all 3 of those, as well as, if you hang in long enough, last week or 2 weeks ago, I think it was, we did a ground beef canning project where we canned 10 pounds of ground beef in a jar. And I had quite a few of you reach out asking about the texture. And you know what? I'm curious about that myself, because I don't want to be canning something and wasting my time making something that we're not actually going to eat. So today, to try it out for the first time, I'm gonna try to make chili. I wanted to do a soft try just so that we had a good experience, I hope. But we'll mix all of that in. I'll go ahead and get started with that. I'll probably mix that first so it can go ahead and start warming up in the crock pot. I don't have to cook anything. I literally just dump a bunch of stuff in the crock pot, and it's so easy. So hang in until the end of this video so that you can see how the canned ground beef tastes, texture, all of that. I will share all of it because, again, that's something I'm really curious about myself. But to get started, this morning I went ahead and mixed up 3 loaves worth of bread recipe, which is right there, and it is a crusty loaf, kind of like an artisan looking loaf of bread. I mixed 3 of them up, so I'm gonna make 3, sorry, sign language again, 3 different loaves of bread, and that way I can test one today, make sure that we like the recipe, and then on Sunday, my loaves will already be in the freezer. All I have to do is pull them out and let them thaw because these freeze really well. It makes it really easy. So we'll take them out of the freezer, and then all I have to do is assemble it. If it tastes great today, then all I have to do Sunday is assemble it. All the baking and everything will already be done. So let me show you that footage now from this morning. Started off with a 1.5 cups of warm water, about 110 degrees. And what you see here in the mason jar is actually my yeast. I keep it in the freezer in the mason jar. That way it does not go bad, and I can keep it for an extended period of time and still be able to use it. I just showed you my Danish dough whisk, and I am whisking together 3 cups of all-purpose flour. However, instead of using all-purpose flour for this recipe, I actually use bread flour. You can use either or. I have found I like the texture of bread flour more, and it rises puffier, as well as 2 teaspoons of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of dry yeast to the 1.5 cups of warm water. All I did was mix them up into a shaggy dough, and that's what that dough looked like, and set them in a warm spot on the counter. Alrighty, I have my apron here, and I decided to go ahead and put it on. I wasn't going to, and then I was like, I probably should. I tend to get stuff all over my clothes, and considering I'm about to pour chili beans as well as tomato sauce, it probably would be a good idea for me to go ahead and wear it. So right here, I have all my stuff that I'm gonna use for my chili beans. Now, obviously, I say chili. I know a lot of people say chili beans. I don't really differentiate between chili beans and chili that you make for like a hot dog or something. So we say chili. My husband grew up saying chili beans, so I don't really know which one you say, but we have right here what we typically put in our chili, and that is tomato sauce and chili beans that you add in. Now, depending on whether you like spicy or not, you can make it more spicy depending on if you choose like mild, medium, hot of the chili beans. And then I have my chili powder, and we put a lot of chili powder in it. I love the taste of it. And then here is our ground beef. I am so curious to see. I'll let you look at it a little closer. This is what it looks like. I know there's kind of a glare on it, but you see there's a little bit of fat at the top, and that's okay if you have a fat layer. It's nice and sealed still. It looks a little grainy. I think that's why a lot of people are kind of curious about what the texture is gonna be. And you can see there's a little bit of the chicken broth still at the bottom, or now it's, I guess, beef broth, because we can the ground beef in it. So it's a mixture between chicken broth and beef broth. So I'm not gonna drain this. Couldn't decide whether I should or not. The beef broth is actually supposed to be really good. You can save it if you do want to drain it. If you feel like it would make it too liquidy, you can save it and put it in something else and cook it, use it in cooking other items, because the beef broth is actually pretty good to cook with. It's better than the store would be. So also we need to remember that I never added salt to this. So I may need to add salt to our chili as well. However, let's go ahead. I'm gonna get all of this open and just dump it in the pot, and then all I have to do is warm it up. And that was a really easy, quick meal, and we'll get to see how the texture of this is later. It definitely has a good seal on it, so no worries there. If it doesn't have a good seal on it and it comes off super easily, just maybe smell it, make sure it's still good. Oh, there we go. Alrighty. So you can kind of see the graininess. Let me come a little closer. Ooh, it smells like ground beef. It smells like cooked ground beef. So you can see the little fat pieces on top right there. That's normal. And then the liquidy, there's a little bit of discoloration on top of the meat, and that is fine too. If you have a little bit of discoloration on the meat that's above the liquid line, that's perfectly safe, as long as you don't see any signs of mold or black mold or just any mold in general. And if it smells like it's spoiled, then definitely that would be a no-go. You wouldn't want that. But mine smells perfectly safe. It smells fine. So we're gonna go ahead and dump it in. So it does look very, very ground up. That would be the only concern that I have with it. So I'm curious if we're gonna end up liking the taste or not, but we'll find out. All right, so that is in there. I'm gonna bring you guys closer so you can see better. Okay, so hopefully you can see it's kind of grainy, but it's not super liquidy or anything like that. So I'm just gonna leave all the liquid in there. And then I'm gonna add in my chili beans. Now, if you're wanting a smaller batch of this, this was 2 pounds because I used a quart and there were 2 pounds in each quart. And then I'm using 2 cans of each per 2 pounds of ground beef. So if you want a smaller batch, say you're not cooking for as many people, then you can do 1 pound of ground beef and 1 can of each. But all of it's to taste, and that's the great part about chili. You can just do it all to taste of what you feel you would like. If you feel that it's too liquidy after you're done, you can add more ingredients that have less liquid. If you don't like the taste of something, you can swap it out for something you do like. We'll do one more, and this is the tomato sauce that we're putting in. So this is what it looks like. There's the ground beef, the beans, and the tomato sauce. And it is a little liquidy for what I typically like, but maybe it's because I haven't gotten it all cooked up yet. So that was just the chili powder. And I didn't measure it, I just eyeball it. So for you guys out there that love measuring things, I would maybe do a tablespoon per pound of ground beef. And if that is not enough, if you don't like the taste of it, add more. Don't be afraid to add more, because chili powder always makes it taste better. But that's looking a lot better. The color definitely looks better. It looks more like a chili you would use on a hot dog. But we're gonna try it for tonight and see how it turns out, and then we'll go from there. So I'm just gonna take this and warm it up, stick it, plug it in, put it on low, let it heat up and warm up. But really, I'm not cooking it. I could put this on the stovetop and let it cook a lot faster, because all I'm doing is warming it up. Everything's cooked. We don't have to worry about cooking anything, which is the wonderful part about this. And so if there's recipes I could find this to use in, even though it's a little bit more of a grainy texture or a very small ground beef texture, then that would be great, because it would still be wonderful to have this on our shelf in case the power went out, or, you know, we just needed a really quick, easy meal, throw together. This is it. So I'm gonna plug this in, and then we'll go ahead and get started on our almond cookies. Actually, I might just put that on warm. I was gonna put it on low, but I might put it on warm because, again, we're not cooking it, and I don't want it to burn between, well, I'll put it on low. I'll change my mind. Because I also don't want it to go bad before we can eat it tonight. All right, so I'm gonna clean this up and then we'll get started on the almond cookies. I have my mixing bowl and we're gonna go ahead and get started. Ooh, that was loud, sorry. We're gonna go ahead and get started on the almond cookies. And this is a Chinese tradition for Chinese New Year, which is coming up this Sunday. We're celebrating it with some friends as well as my family, of course. And I'm excited because this is a snacky, desserty kind of thing that they use to celebrate Chinese New Year. Now, many Chinese people don't love super sweet things, so typically the sweet stuff is more for the younger kids, the younger generation. However, this is not a super sweet cookie, so I'm curious to see how it's going to turn out and whether we like it or not. But at the very least, I'm excited to join them, and I'm thankful that they're welcoming me in to celebrate with them. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the almond cookies, and it calls for almond flour, and which I already had in my pantry and needed to use, so that was wonderful. And it says for 1 cup of almond flour, and then 1/3 cup of almond flour. I hope these turn out okay because I've never made them. So I'm doing a test run today, and if they turn out great, then I'll bake them again this weekend. I'm going to cut up these, and I may go ahead and make the dough today because I can always freeze the dough and then bake it, which would make it a lot easier. So I may do that. We'll see how these turn out. I have my 2 sticks of butter, and then it says for a pinch of salt. And it says to cube the butter and put it in with the almond flour, and then we're gonna mix it for about 3 minutes, and it said it should look kind of crumbly looking. If you're interested in this recipe and wanting to join in the celebration of Chinese New Year, then feel free to look in the description. I will post this recipe in there. All right, so I'm just gonna cube this up. There might be an easier way to do that. Let me do long ways first. Maybe. Okay, I have my cubed butter. And we're gonna stick that in there. Okay, I have my 2 sticks of butter, my 1 1/3 cup of almond flour, and now I'm gonna do my pinch of salt. It didn't say a measurement, so I just have a bit of a pinch there of salt. And we're gonna stick this on the blender. While I'm moving these bowls, because I need to get to my blender that's right there, I need to move these, and I thought we could take a quick peek to see how they're looking. Oh, they're looking good. They are getting a little bit of a crust on top, but that's okay if you see that little bit of crust. That will go away. You will never even notice it later. I have my attachment on here. That is what it looks like in the bowl, if you can see it. And we're gonna go ahead and turn it on. There we go. I know it's kind of loud, but I have my egg here. It says to put 1 egg in. Once this, and I rewrote the recipe. So it says it's not crumbly. It says it's chunky looking is what it should be. So I'll show you what that looks like. And then it said to add 1 egg and a teaspoon of almond extract. However, I don't have almond extract. I am going to substitute for vanilla extract. That is going to cut down on the flavor of the almond cookie, which is kind of the whole point of it. So unfortunately, I just don't have it. So we're just going to go ahead and substitute for this, which this is our homemade vanilla extract. And I can always link that video either in the description or at the end. That way you guys, if you want to make your own, you're welcome to. That in there, and the vanilla extract, which guys, this smells fantastic. It smells wonderful. That's what it looks like up close. You can see the vanilla beans are still in there, so they're still extracting the vanilla, which is wonderful. And I have 4 more jars of these on my shelf. So it made a lot when we did make it. So just 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And I also gifted one this past Christmas. I just wanted to try it before I started gifting it to a bunch of people. It was family that I gifted to, and they were excited about it. So I'm excited that we get to use that, and it's got on my hands and it smells really good. Okay, so go ahead and get this going again. And I'm gonna mix this until it's fully incorporated. I have my 5-gallon bucket here of all-purpose flour. And fun fact, I know I said this in another video, but you can get these 5-gallon bucket that is food grade from the bakery section at Walmart. All you have to do is go up to the bakery section, and it's what they put their fondant and their cake mixes and stuff like that. That's how they get it, receive it to bake in the bakery section, is in these 5-gallon buckets. And if you go up to them and say, I would love to buy some, can you please save some for me? They will save them for you. Sometimes they'll rinse them out for you if you ask them to. Sometimes they don't. It's not a big deal. I can wash it because it saves me money. But they'll sell you the lid and the bucket for $1, which is amazing, because if you go to any other section in Walmart or Home Depot or wherever it is that you could find food grade 5-gallon buckets, they'll be maybe $4 or $5 for the bucket, and then $2 or $3 for the lid. So you're saving a lot of money going to the bakery section. And yes, it's gently used, but that's not really a big deal to me. So if it's not a big deal to you, you can get them for $1 at Walmart, which is wonderful. So this is what I keep my flour in, just because I go through it so much. I buy it in bulk. Where did I put it? So we're gonna do a cup and 3/4 cup. So there's my cup. And then I have a 1/4 cup measuring cup here. And I'm gonna do 3 of these. One, I'm gonna go ahead and sift this through. That way I can get my sugar next. And I may have to restock my sugar too. I think it's looking pretty low too. Obviously I've been baking a lot lately. I just wiped my face. Hopefully I didn't get flour all over my face, but if I did, I'm sorry. It's just part of baking. So we're gonna go ahead and sift. Actually, I may dump it all in together at the same time, and that way it mixes as I'm sifting it. And I should have enough sugar here. This is a 1/2 cup measuring cup, so I'm just gonna do 2 of these. There's a cup, and then it says 2 tablespoons. So I have my tablespoon measuring here. One cup and 2 tablespoons of sugar. And now it says for, I think, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Let me check. Yep, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. So where did I put my baking soda? Oh, I left it over there. So let me grab my baking soda, and then we'll start sifting it. And if I need to mix it more, of course I will. There's a lot in there, so hopefully we can get it sifted. I'm just gonna go ahead and start mixing this in, and that way, this is what it looks like, just like flour. Nothing super special. So I'm gonna go ahead and start mixing this in, and sometimes it can be hard to get in there. So I'm gonna mix a little bit in, and then turn it on for a minute, and then I'll go ahead and mix the rest. Okay, I have my cling wrap here, and we're gonna put this in the refrigerator for 2 hours. It says that we need to let it rest for 2 hours in the fridge. It may end up being a little bit longer than that, but that's okay. So this is what the almond cookie dough looks like. It looks just like normal cookie dough. I'm sure it will just have a strong almond flavor to it. But I'm gonna go ahead and get my cling wrap out, and it just says to pat it into like a disc shape, which is what we typically do with our cookie dough anyway, so that works out well. That is a big, large amount. So let me separate it. I'm gonna pull out a little bit of that and cook some tonight to see what they taste like and how they turned out. And then I'm gonna save the rest of the dough. I may stick it in the freezer and save the rest for this weekend. That way I don't have to make a whole nother batch, because this made a good bit. So I'm just gonna take a chunk of it. We'll go ahead and get this little batch wrapped up, and this is what I'm gonna make for this evening or today, depending on what time I can get it done. And this batch I'm gonna stick in the freezer. Look how much that made. That made a lot. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. That made a lot of dough, which is wonderful. I just need to I wanna make sure we save it so that it doesn't go bad. So I'm gonna wrap it really well and then stick it in the freezer, and that way it can rest in the freezer instead of in the fridge. Here we go. So I have enough for maybe 2 or 3 cookies, maybe 3 cookies, maybe 4. We'll have to see. I'll see how big, maybe 4 cookies. And then the rest we will save for this weekend when I am going to the Chinese New Year party. Y'all, we have gotten so much done today. I'm really excited about it because we have gotten our chili using our canned ground beef. It is in the crock pot, ready to go, warming up, and it already feels really warm, so I may turn it down to warm. That way it's just ready to go when we get back from jiu-jitsu this evening. And then we also have our 3 loaves of bread rising. They're supposed to rise for 12 to 18 hours. I may push it. I may not have them rise quite that long. However, it's just all of a timing thing. That's the hardest part with bread, is just getting your timing right if you're baking your own bread. But that's okay because we have plenty of time this evening. After I get back and put the kids down, I will work on baking most of those. I only have one Dutch oven, so I can only bake one at a time, and we'll see how many I can get done this evening. If I get a good routine and on a roll, it should be fine. However, I also want to bake my almond cookies. We have those in the fridge. Those are resting, so we've gotten a lot done. Chili, bread, almond cookies. The only thing I haven't gotten to yet is the monkey bread. And you know what? That is the simplest one of all. It's literally cutting a bunch of biscuits up, mixing a bunch of ingredients together, and it tastes fantastic. Love monkey bread. If you've never had it before, you're about to be in for a treat, and I would strongly recommend trying it. It's a great dessert or breakfast item. Some people eat it for breakfast. I'm about to go pick my kiddos up, and I will see you here shortly. Hey everybody, it's the end of the day, and I wanted to go ahead and taste test the chili to see what it tastes like before I feed it to my family. So let's give it a try. I'll show a close-up of what it looks like in the bowl, but it's a lot more liquidy. I'll let you try it in just a moment, okay? It's definitely a lot more liquidy than I intended for it to be, so that was my fault. I think I just put too much tomato sauce, but for the most part, it looks great. I mean, you can see the chunks of chili in it, the chunks of hamburger beef, ground beef that is ground up and that we had canned, so let's give it a try. I have no problems with the texture. The texture of the ground beef is great. Now, I will say the pieces of it are a lot smaller, more kind of like a grainy texture, meaning that they're just chopped up a lot smaller. They're not bigger chunks of ground beef. So if you think that that would bother you, then the canning ground beef may not be for you. However, for me, especially because it's mixed in with the chili beans, it really isn't bad at all. The taste of the meat is great. The taste of the chili is great. No problems at all. Again, I think it's a little too liquidy for me, just because normally I put tomato sauce in it, like 2 cans. But what I probably should have done is just started pouring the tomato sauce and see what how it looked as I poured it. And instead I put my typical of 2. So as well as the beef broth from the canned jar. So I think that was just too much liquid. So I'll show you a close-up of what that looks like. However, other than that, taste-wise, texture-wise, is not bad at all. I would just leave out less liquid next time, but that has nothing to do with the canning ground beef. That's just me needing to learn how to cook with the canned ground beef and maybe adjust my recipes to that. But other than that, the texture of it is not a problem for me. We're gonna add cornbread and cheese to the top, and that way the cornbread adds a grainy texture to it anyway, but I wouldn't say it even has a grainy texture. I think it's just the ground beef pieces are smaller. But I'm gonna go ahead and get it served up to my kids and feed them dinner, and then we'll come back and get started back with our breads.
I want some more.
Okay, I'll get you some more in just a moment. I'll go ahead and get our cornbread made and the loaves of bread, and then we can start on the monkey bread. So hang in there.
Hello.
It's now time to get started on the 3 loaves. I preheated the oven to 450 degrees and put the Dutch oven in the oven as I'm preheating it. So before you even start the oven and turn it on, go ahead and put the Dutch oven in there. You want it to get up and nice and hot, and it can do this while your first loaf is rising. So I went ahead, turned it on, put the Dutch oven in, and now I'm getting started with folding our first loaf. When you first pull the dough out, you may see a little crusty layer on top. That is perfectly normal. It's not a problem. Once you bake the dough, you will not notice that it was there at all. The first loaf, all we have to do with all of the loaves is I get a piece of parchment paper, sprinkle it with a little bit of flour. It can either be bread flour or regular all-purpose flour, either one. And you're going to lightly coat the surface, and then you want to take the dough and kind of pull it up on the edges and gather it up to the center at the top. And do that over and over again. You're going to feel the dough get really tight and taut. And that's what you want because that is organizing the gluten. And once you have it and it's nice, round, smooth ball, you may just go around and pull up the edges, maybe 2 times in a circle, a 360-degree circle. And once you've done that, you are able to gather the top, flip it over, and sit it back down on the parchment paper, put it back in the bowl, and let it rise for another 30 minutes while the Dutch oven is preheating. After I'm done and I put it back in the bowl, I do get a cloth and I put the cloth back over it so it doesn't dry out more and set it in a warm spot, which for me is over the oven, to let it rise some more. After 30 minutes are up, I go ahead and I lightly flour the surface of the dough and then I score it. And you can do whatever design that you want. I just went for a super simple design because I was doing so much today. And to be honest, I really need to practice my scoring. It's definitely something that I can improve on because my scoring is not very pretty. But you can do all pretty, beautiful designs. Today, I just went with a simple 3 lines across the top. And once my oven is preheated to 450 degrees, my Dutch oven has been in there for the last 30 minutes of my loaf rising. And now I am placing the parchment paper and dough into the pot with the lid. Be very careful not to grab the Dutch oven lid or the Dutch oven because sometimes it's easy to grab that lid without thinking about it, but you need the mittens on or the gloves on because it is very hot and you will definitely get burned. But put the lid back on, stick it in the oven for another 30 minutes. After 30 minutes were up, I went ahead and took the lid off and let it stay at the same temperature in there for another 15 minutes. You want it to get that nice golden brown on top. It is finished after a total of 45 minutes being in the oven, and this is what it looks like. It turned out great. No problems with any of the 3 loaves. I did all 3 loaves that same evening, and I did end up staying up late that night to do it. However, we got it done. Now I have one to make for a snack and a trial run with my family, and then the other 2 I stuck in the freezer with no problems. One of the ways that I check to see if the loaf is finished is by gently tapping on the bottom, and it should have a hollow sound if it's finished baking. It is the end of the day and I did not get everything finished, but that is okay because I'm going to come back in the morning. We got the 3 loaves almost baked. I have those 2 finished. There's 1 more in the oven that I'm currently working on. It is pretty late. It's after 10 o'clock. And I knew I had set high goals for myself today, and that's okay, but I'm tired. So we also have tomorrow. I'll come back tomorrow. We'll do the monkey bread, and then I want to taste test the almond cookies as well. So we'll bake those up. The little amount of dough that I put in the refrigerator is still in the refrigerator, and I'm just going to save it for tomorrow. Hopefully that doesn't change the texture too much. If it does, then I'll know for next time and I'll just make a fresh batch this weekend. But I'm really hoping that it turns out great. Because as you can tell, I'm tired because now I'm just rambling. But I'm going to finish up this one dough, this one bread, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit the hay. But I will see you guys in the morning to finish up our party prepping for the 2 parties this weekend. I am back. It is the next day and we're just getting started on our pecans. I'm going to go ahead and get those baked up and put out. I have my egg wash that I'm getting started here where I take 1 egg and scramble it with a little bit of water, as well as set my almonds aside, and then we will be ready to get started flattening them out. Here is my sample batch of almond dough cookie dough. So we're going to test it. Now, the recipe said to only do 2 hours in the refrigerator. It has stayed about 12 hours in the refrigerator, if not longer. So hopefully that doesn't affect the texture. I don't foresee it affecting it too much. But what I'm going to do is break this off and roll each one into little coin size balls. Because when we want these to flatten out and cook, we don't want them to be too big because the recipe says for it to be coin size. Now, obviously coin size is really small. We don't want it quite that small. I thought it would be fun to go over this book that my son brought home from school. What do you celebrate in the holidays and festivals around the world? It is wonderful. It's really neat because it has many of the different countries in the world, Ireland, United States, Sorry, I hit the camera. It has Ireland, United States. In the United States, of course, we celebrate the 4th of July, as well as All-American Super Bowl party, India, all of these different places that and what holidays they celebrate. And it had China in it, which is what's coming up, the Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year in China, and I'm probably not going to pronounce this, Xinyan. I could totally be pronouncing that completely wrong. However, it told the story of the legend of Xinyan, the Chinese New Year. I'm just going to read it to you. The legend behind Xinyan, or Chinese New Year, has to do with a hungry beast named Nian. On the first night of the New Year, Nian used to come down from the mountains and eat anything he could find in the villages, grains, animals, and even people. The frightened villagers hid in their homes until Nian went away. One day, an old man told the villagers that Nian was afraid of 3 things: loud noises, fire, and the color red. So the next time Nian came, the villagers were ready. They had decorated their houses in red and put on red clothing. When the beast approached, they lit firecrackers and pounded on drums to scare Nian away for good. Xinyan is China's biggest and most important celebration of the year. It takes place in January or February, and the celebrations last for a week or longer. To start the year off with good fortune, families decorate their homes with red paper, cuttings, lanterns, and banners with the Chinese character for good luck on them. Throughout New Year's Day, people wear red clothes and feast on such foods as whole fish, dumplings, noodles, and Nian. I could say this one wrong too. Nian cow, I think is how it's pronounced. Nian cow, because it says it right here and how to pronounce it in English. Oh, there it is. Nian cow. A Xinyan dessert. Adults give children hong bao, which is red envelopes filled with money. Many neighborhoods have parades during which everyone pounds their drums and lights firecrackers to keep Nian away. The holiday ends under a full moon with a festival that often includes a dancing dragon, acrobats, and martial arts performers. And you many of times see these, which are the red cuttings, as well as the envelopes. Even our local restaurant, our local Chinese restaurant, if you go there on Chinese New Year, a lot of times the owners will give the children little red envelopes with money in them, which is really neat to see. And I never knew the story of the dragon. I knew that the dragon was popular in China. However, I didn't realize that this is why they celebrate. And this is actually the year of the dragon, which is really neat. So I just thought I would share that with you guys. I have my coin-shaped cookies here. So after we rolled them into the ball, all we wanted to do was just gently flatten them out, and you can see they're really small. However, I realized I forgot to spray the parchment paper with the nonstick spray. So we're gonna go ahead and do that real quick and then just add them on, which is not a problem. Now I'm taking my almonds and we are going to press them. Now, a lot of the recipes you see online, they cut them, they slice them in half, and then we'll put them on that way. I'm just gonna go ahead and, for the sake of time, just push them on because I see them done both ways. That's what they look like. They look really cute. And now all we have to do is spread the egg wash on and then stick them in the oven. There we go. Too much on the first one. This is what they look like. They look really pretty and cute. We're gonna put them in the oven at 325 degrees Fahrenheit and leave them in the oven. The recipe says 15 to 17 minutes. However, I'm gonna set my alarm for 13 to check on them just because they're so small. I feel like they're gonna end up burning if I leave them in that long. So I would rather be safe than sorry, and we're gonna go ahead and bake them up and see what they look like when they're done. So this morning we finished baking our almond cookies, and I wanted to give them a taste test before we go ahead and get started on our monkey bread, which I'm really excited about because I had this growing up, but I haven't had it in years and I've never actually tried to bake it, but it's the simplest thing ever. So I don't know why I haven't. It's just one of those things. But I will link all of these recipes down below. Everything that I've been doing today, I will link in the description. So if you want to follow along or adjust it to how your wish is of things that you like and taste that you like, that's fine too. But I want to go ahead and give these almond cookies a try and see how they taste. So give me 1 second. Let me grab one. They are cooled off enough to be able to try them. This is what they look like. And again, you can slice the almond. If you don't have a lot of almonds, you can slice them to make them go a little bit further. I've seen them done both ways, but I was curious what they tasted like. Oh, that's good. It tastes like a sugar cookie, but with just almond flavor. So that tastes really good. And I saw these when I was in China. So it's really fun to be able to know how to make it. I wanted to make something for the party, but I didn't want to go outside of my abilities because they're really good at cooking. And I was afraid if I brought something trying to be, you know, on par, it would taste terrible. Because a lot of them own their own restaurants and know how to cook Chinese food all the time. So I wanted to do something somewhat in my wheelhouse, but this turned out great. It tastes like ones that I have had in the past, and they look great. So I think we're good. I think I can take these with me on Sunday. So that's really exciting. And now that we have all of our Chinese New Year celebration stuff completed, it's time to move on to the all-American, it's not a holiday, but celebration of Super Bowl party fun. And I'm gonna go ahead and bake the rest of our garlic bread. I'm gonna turn those into pull-apart garlic bread. So the loaves are finished. I'm gonna make one today for fun to taste test and as a snack for my kids, as well as leave 2 for Sunday for us to take to the Super Bowl party. And then those monkey bread as well, I'm gonna be taking to the Super Bowl party. I asked them what they wanted me to bring. All of them said these, so that's what I'm doing. I gave them options of different things that I could bring that I thought would be fun Super Bowl party things, and they actually chose the things that I thought would be the ones that they would choose last because I thought they would choose more Super Bowl party options, but that's okay because I enjoy baking, I enjoy making it, and I enjoy getting to feed people. So let's go ahead and get started with those fun American holiday, or not holiday, but celebration items and get ready for our Super Bowl party now. All we need is 24 ounces of biscuits. This is 32, and to save myself some time, these are just the buttermilk biscuits from Aldi that are 16 ounces each, and we just need 24. But I'm gonna go ahead and cut them all up. That way we have them. If we don't need them, that's fine. And you just quarter them. And I'm using scissors to make my life a lot easier. These are nice and clean scissors and washed. I left half of the can, so there's 4 biscuits still left in here. I'm gonna leave those whole for now, and I may bake those separate just as normal biscuits because the recipe only calls for 24 ounces of biscuits, and that equals 32 because each one is 16 ounces, which apparently I can't do math because I totally thought that that was 24 ounces in the store when I bought it, but that's completely okay because we're just using the Aldi brand. But I'm really excited to try this because I grew up I grew up eating monkey bread, and I absolutely loved it. If you've never had monkey bread, you are missing out. It is fantastic, the simplest thing ever to make. All we have to do now that we cut our biscuits into quarters is take sugar and cinnamon, mix it up in here, and roll them all in there. Slowly place them. Make sure this is well oiled, well greased, well buttered. The recipe says to butter it. I think I'm just gonna spray it super well with this because I'm also putting a lot of butter in here in the mixture that the sauce that we're gonna make on the stove. So I'm really excited to try this and see how it turns out. I have my sugar here. I'm just using standard sugar at the moment. So there's 1/2 of a cup to make a whole cup. There's the other half. So I'm just gonna set this aside for now and then grab my cinnamon. We are almost out. And give that a little whisk. Literally. Until we get it all nice and mixed up, and I may add a little more cinnamon to it and use up the rest of what's in here. There's not a lot left in here, so I may just put the rest of it in here. I need to make sure I buy some more. I'm gonna go ahead and preheat my oven to 350 degrees so that way it can get warmed up. I always try to double check because I have almost burned my house down because we left something in the oven and I didn't realize it. So moving forward, I always try to double check that my oven's empty before I leave it preheating and turn it on. All we have to do now, I'm gonna spray our bundt pan. If you have a flat one or a curved one like this, it doesn't matter. Just whichever one you have, make sure you either put a lot of oil on it or a lot of cooking spray and get it really good. And you just take each piece and roll it in your cinnamon and sugar mixture. And that's what it's gonna look like. This is what your cinnamon and sugar looks like once you kind of mix it up a bit. And I know I eyeballed it. The recipe, if you want to go by specific instructions, the recipe's in there. However, it's kind of fun because over time you realize there are some things that you need to measure out. However, there are other things that if you're not the exact measurements, it's not a big deal. Whatever you don't use to cover these, you're going to end up using for your syrup here in a moment. So I'm not worried about, you know, having too much in here or not enough or that kind of thing. If there's not enough, then we'll add more, but I think we're good to go. I think we'll have plenty. Give me a thumbs up if you have had monkey bread before, and let me know if there's a specific recipe that maybe your grandmother used or something. I know this is one that is typically a recipe seen in the South, in United States, the South, and we like it because of course, anything drenched in butter and sugar, what's not to like? Plus cinnamon. I still have a good bit of sugar and cinnamon left. And then that's what it looks like so far. It's about halfway full. And I still have a good half, maybe 1/3 of the biscuits here. So what I'm gonna do is take some of this, about half a cup, and create my syrup. And I still have a good half, maybe 1/3 of the biscuits here. So what I'm gonna do is take some of this, about half a cup, and create my syrup. All right, so I have all of my ingredients here. I have my pot, I cleaned off my stove, so that looks a lot better. I have my 2 sticks of butter, as well as our cinnamon and sugar mixture that I'm gonna save some of this for the rest of our biscuits, but I checked it, we have plenty. All we need is a half a cup for this syrup mixture, as well as our homemade brown sugar. And you guys, if you don't know how to make your own brown sugar, it's the simplest thing ever and it tastes fantastic. The texture is wonderful. The taste is wonderful. I would strongly recommend it. But here's our homemade brown sugar. I will say, just like anything else from the South, this is not a healthy dish. I would not recommend it if you're trying to diet. However, if you're wanting to treat yourself or do it for a fun celebration, this is a fun one to do. Definitely not healthy. We'll go ahead and get started with putting our sticks of butter in the saucepan and letting them melt down a little bit. As they're melting, I'm gonna start adding our sugar mixtures. We'll have half a cup of this and half a cup of brown sugar. Again, not healthy, but so good. So probably one of the reasons why I haven't made this very often is the fact that it's not exactly the healthiest thing for you. It's more of just a super big treat. I'll go ahead and get those on. Our oven is preheated, and once these heat up, I'm gonna go ahead and measure out this one, which is the cinnamon and sugar mixture. So there's half a cup, which is what we need, and see, I have plenty left to do the rest of the biscuits. So I'm just gonna sit this over here, and this might take a minute. You know, it's one of those old sayings, don't watch water trying to boil, because then it takes that much longer. So I'm just gonna let this sit here for a minute and then I'll be back. As you can see, our butter is starting to melt. So I'm gonna go ahead and start adding, I think it's melted enough to start adding our mixtures. So I'm adding half a cup of the sugar and cinnamon. And then we want to add half a cup of this brown sugar as well. And I'm just kind of gently packing it in to make half a cup. And then we want to bring this up to a boil. The recipe says for us to bring it up to just a quick boil, just long enough for the ingredients to become incorporated and dissolved. We want the sugar to not be grainy. We want it to kind of be more of a syrupy texture. So we're just going to let this slowly melt together. And I don't want to do it too fast because I don't want it to burn. While this is warming up, I'm gonna go ahead and finish breading my other pieces or sugaring up the breaded biscuit pieces. And that way we can add it all together really quickly if we need to. Oh, there it is. See how it's starting to bubble a little bit? So I'm gonna take it off the stove and stir it a little more, and then I'll meet you back over here. Here's our bundt pan. I want to sit it on the stove. I think y'all can see it right there. I'm gonna gently drizzle this over. Whoa, I'm making a mess. Now I'm going to add the rest of our biscuits. And then I'll drizzle the rest over it as well. Once we put this in the oven, it will rise. So don't be afraid if you don't fill it all the way. You have to remember your biscuits will rise too. They'll fluff up a good bit. I'm gonna turn my stove off. Once we put this in the oven, it will bake up really pretty. So I wanna make sure, I'm just gonna kind of make sure everything's nice and covered. That looks good. So let's get this in the oven and let it bake for a little bit. And then I'll show you what it looks like after we're done. To give my kids a snack today, and again, to kind of test out how it goes, I'm going to show you guys how I'm gonna make the ones on Sunday by cubing the bread. All I do is I cut all the way down, and we're gonna be making garlic pull-apart bread, or pull-apart garlic bread, however you wanna call it. And to do that, I just make a rustic loaf, and then I cut in cubes all the way down to the very bottom, but not through it. You don't wanna cut through it. See how I have the different layers and they're cut way down, but not all the way through. That's beautiful. So now I'm gonna turn it 90 degrees and I'm gonna now cut it this way, same way. So let me show you guys what this looks like up close. There's the loaf, and see how it's separating into cubes. That's what we wanna see. And now I get to heat up some butter and melt some butter. That was a piece of bread that broke off. Ooh, the bread on the inside looks beautiful as well. So now that I have this cut and baked, I'm just gonna get my butter mixture put together, wrap it in aluminum foil, and then when I get home with the kids, I'll stick it in the oven, let it heat up, and give them a nice, gooey, warm snack and treat when they get home from school. I have my stick of butter here, and I'm just gonna slowly warm it up in the microwave. Again, you don't wanna burn it, and it can heat up pretty quick and easy. So I'll just do about 15 seconds at a time until it's completely melted and I can start mixing other things into it. If the butter doesn't melt right away, just do 15-second increments until it's fully melted, and then that way you don't have anything to worry about. But I have my Italian seasoning here, and I thought I had a block of Parmesan cheese to be able to shred and put it in it, however, and I don't. So I found this, and I'm just gonna use this. Again, use what you have. It doesn't have to be specific. I will say the better quality ingredients you use, the better the taste, but people are gonna love it anyway. I found that homemade stuff is hard to come by these days. Most people just go to the store and buy stuff, which there's not a problem with that either. Life happens, we do the same thing. But if we do happen to make stuff, I found that that's not as often or not as common. So I like to do it when I can. If I can't, no big deal. So use what you have, and we're gonna use this today. And then I did have a block of Colby Jack cheese. So I'm gonna shred maybe about half of this, and then we'll stuff it in between the cubes. Whatever I don't use for the bread, I will stick in a container and we can use for a dipping sauce of some sort later on. This is the garlic salt. And again, be pretty maybe not that generous, be pretty generous with it. Same thing with the Parmesan cheese, whatever Parmesan cheese you happen to have. Look how yummy that is looking. The chunks you see are the Parmesan that I need to still break up, but other than that, look how pretty that is. And that's gonna go in between the cubes. Again, welcome to the South. This was not the healthiest option. I do try to take healthy options typically, but this time around, it just didn't happen. This is what they all wanted, so this is what I'm making. So you can drizzle this, you can paint this on, do whatever you want. If it gets on the outside, no big deal. You wanna try to get it in between every cube if possible. And I may go ahead and put this on aluminum foil. That way, if any drippings that I get aren't going on my wooden cutting board, but on the aluminum. Because I'm gonna make sure this is fully covered. If you put it in the oven to heat it all up together, you wanna make sure that all the bread is fully covered. Otherwise, whatever isn't covered will end up having like a little burned or be a little tougher than the rest. And I'm gonna paint the rest of this maybe along the top just so we can use, just flung it everywhere. Just so we can use up all this yummy goodness. If I have it in my hair, I'll get it out in a moment. I'm sorry. This is why I wear an apron, because that way I don't get it all over myself. But I want to use up all this yummy goodness. That way we're not wasting any of it. I'm gonna cover this because it's time for me to go get my kids. And when I get back, we'll stuff the cheese, shred it, stuff it in here, stick it in the oven, let it warm up, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. And all you have to do is pull a chunk out and eat it. And it's so delicious. Now that the monkey bread is completely finished baking after 30 minutes, I take it out of the oven and let it sit on the counter for at least another 30 minutes, if not more, to let it cool. Mostly, it's completely wonderful if you can eat it hot and fresh out of the oven. However, you want to let it cool some before you flip it over onto the plate. Now we are on to our garlic pull-apart bread, and all I'm doing here is taking the cheese and stuffing it in between each cubes now that we're back. Once I do that, I have preheated the oven to 350 degrees. I'm completely wrapping the garlic bread in aluminum foil. You don't want to leave any part exposed, otherwise that could get burnt and hardened. And then stick it in there until the cheese is melted and warmed all the way through. And after that, you're ready to serve both of them. The monkey bread has had some time to cool a little bit, so I'm trying to flip it onto the plate. However, I realized it is not coming out. So I don't know if it's because I used a nonstick spray instead of the butter. So maybe you try the butter first and see if that works. But I had a hard time getting it out and had to use a knife to try to scrape around the edges to loosen it up. And when I finally did get it out, it came out as one big pile. So it also may have been because I put the syrup in that we had made halfway through versus on the top to let it soak all the way down. So I will try both of those differently come Sunday when I bake this again. The kids are now home from school and enjoying all of the snacks that we have made together. I will say each of them liked something different, and I learned something to do different come Sunday when I make these again with each of these items. Like for the garlic bread, I needed to let it melt the cheese a little bit longer in the oven. The monkey bread, I needed to make sure I put the syrup on top, not through the middle, to try to help it hold its shape better. And then the cookies, I need to make those smaller. So again, it's a learning process and we're able to learn together. It is the end of the day and we are finished. After 2 days of cooking, I was able to finish all that I had hoped to succeed for yesterday. That is okay though, because we got it all done. We were able to make 3 loaves of artisan bread, which turned out fantastic. I turned one of them into a garlic loaf and I showed you that video footage. It was wonderful. My kids loved it. We made monkey bread. We made it's called Lucky Coin cookies, also the Chinese almond cookies. So those turned out great. We have the dough made and prepped for Sunday, as well as the loaves are put in the freezer for Sunday too for the Super Bowl party. So yay, as well as monkey bread, and that turned out fantastic. So we made a lot of things. I think I listed all of it. Oh, and chili. We were able to give an update on the ground beef chili, and I will say, after, I was very skeptical of it as I was mixing it up. I was really curious how it was going to taste. I kept saying it was grainy. However, I don't think grainy is the right word. It just was really small. Like the ground beef was ground up really small and it seemed more like hot dog beef. However, or chili, hot dog chili. Now, after I fed it to the family and after I ate it myself, I never even noticed the texture. It never fazed me one bit. And to be honest, I was also skeptical my husband wouldn't eat it. He is a very picky eater. And I thought he would walk in, look at it and be like, no, I don't think so. However, he didn't. He had 2 helpings, as well as every single one of my children did. They all had 2 helpings. They loved it. They did not mind the texture at all. It didn't faze them. It didn't faze me. I didn't even notice the texture, which I was very surprised at. I thought I would. I thought it would bother me. But we ended up liking it. So I hope that helps you guys, all of you that were curious about the ground beef texture. If you do not like the taste of hot dog chili, like that small ground beef, like small pieces of it, you may not like it. It may bother you. I thought it would me. It didn't. It didn't bother me at all. I actually really like the flavor. I like the taste. I like the texture. It may be different if I were to use it in taco meat or anything like that. That's yet to be determined. However, in chili, it was a very large success. I never had any complaints. They all ate multiple helpings. So it turned out great. So I hope that helped you guys. I hope that answered some of your questions. If you have more questions, please feel free to ask below in the comments section. I would be happy to answer anything that I can. I want to take this time to say thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know that you guys have a busy schedule, and I really appreciate that you took time to watch this video, join in on this community that we are trying to build to encourage each other to try baking, canning, preserving, all of these new things that we just want to learn and create a community of encouragement together. So please feel free to ask questions down below. Thank you so much for that time and taking time to comment below. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I hope to see you guys next time.